All right, Sweepo, you guys know the drill. To officially open this afternoon's keynote, we're going to give a huge round of applause right here on the stage, FY 2022 President Rachel Morford.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome also to our members and guests who are joining us virtually. This has been quite a conference, hasn't it? Woo! It has been so exciting for us all to come together, this time both virtually and live. We had some great sessions this week, right? Woo! The inspirational insight sessions and the career fair were both very well attended, and all of the feedback that I have gotten personally, and I know that our staff has gotten, has been very positive, so thank you for that. And We 21 had session offerings that covered a wide range of topics. We had sessions like building momentum in industry, skills for your first 5 years. We had a session called Reducing the Learning Curve and Becoming a Great Strategic Leader, one of my personal favorites, and Woof, how I used Rover to expand my network. I hope you had sessions that stuck out in your mind as being exceptional, that were informational, and that inspired you. As a reminder, you'll be able to view a lot of the We 21 sessions online for the next 3 months. So your learning and inspiration doesn't stop today. I hope that each one of you also took the opportunity to reach out and make new connections. One of the great strengths of SWE is its far-reaching network. I know my SWE network has helped me both professionally and personally, but you have to take that first step and reach out and introduce yourself to the person sitting next to you. If you haven't done so already, please do that. You have great friends and allies in this room and around the country and the world who are ready to help you. Let's take a moment to congratulate everyone who participated in this year's conference, from headquarters staff to the board of directors and board of trustees, all of our committees, sponsors, partners, volunteers, and especially to you who attended this year, again, both virtually and here in person. Congratulations to each and every one of you for making We 21 happen. Woo! Despite a constantly evolving global pandemic, please know we look to next year with the hope and promise of an even larger live audience when we meet in Houston. I hope I get to see you there next year in October. Now, before we get to today's keynote, you should all know the drill by now, I want to take a moment to thank today's sponsors. SWE values its ongoing relationships with its sponsor partners, and I want to recognize their participation. For this afternoon's keynote, we have 2 organizations sponsoring us, and it's the closing keynote, so this is a big deal. To start things off, please welcome Emerson to say a few words.
Did you ever think the future would be like this? Did you ever think that people would one day want to be their own stockbrokers? Or turn their studio apartments into hotels? That they would busy themselves tracking calories, steps, and teenagers? Or that it would be a good idea to push a button and get picked up in a stranger's car? Call it disruption, progress, engineers gone wild. Whatever it is, we're all in. We are engineers, designers, and thinkers out to not just create something and unleash it onto the world. We make it to impact what's most important to you, your world. We don't just make the most efficient compressors in the world. We make sleep. We don't just make the EPA's highest award-winning smart thermostat. We make home. We don't just make software that runs over 50% of all US power companies. We make light. We don't just make the technology that 3 of the top 4 pharmaceutical companies use to inoculate the world against COVID. We make peace of mind. We don't just push technology forward. We help the world's most essential industries solve the biggest challenges of modern life. We don't just make a diverse, progressive, and inclusive work environment. We make the freedom for employees to be their best. We don't just drive innovation. We make the world healthier, safer, smarter, and more sustainable.
Thank you, Emerson. And now, please welcome our second sponsor, an alma mater of this afternoon's keynote. Expect to hear a lot of applause in the audience for this one, Purdue University College of Engineering.
Lillian was here from 1935 to 1948 as a professor of management in the College of Engineering. She was the first female faculty member in the College of Engineering at the time.
I always feel it's homecoming when I'm allowed to come back to the campus where I've spent so many happy years, and now to have this opportunity to tell you a little about some of the things I have seen.
Within the Women in Engineering program, our mission, if you will, is to enrich the profession of engineering with the full participation of women.
Thank you to both Emerson and Purdue University's College of Engineering for supporting SWE and today's keynote. Also, thanks go out to all of our sponsors and partners. Without your participation, this conference would not have been possible. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to remind everyone that we will be having a question and answer session immediately after the keynote presentation. Please use the We21 mobile app to submit questions. To do so, navigate to this afternoon's keynote on the app, and at the bottom of the screen, touch Submit Your Questions. Enter your question on the next screen and touch Submit. Again, as with our previous keynotes, although we often can't get to everyone's questions due to time constraints, please still submit them, as I may use your question if I may use your question if Patti agrees to have a follow-up diverse podcast. Today's keynote is Patti Poppe, the CEO of Pacific Gas and Electric, or PG&E. With degrees in both business and engineering, Patti's journey as an engineer can be traced back to her parents, convincing her to attend a Women in Engineering Career Day at Purdue University. While at the Career Day, she met a woman who inspired her to become an engineer. In other words, Patti is a great example of the Aspire to Inspire story. Patti also credits her involvement with SWE while at Purdue as a critical accelerant to her success. Inducted in the Automotive Hall of Fame with a Young Leaders Excellence Award, and noted as the first female president in Consumer Energy's 129-year history, Patti is regarded as a trailblazer in both the automotive and energy sectors. 2 sectors, that's incredible. She's also willing to be an atypical leader. When she started as CEO of PG&E, she stated that their purpose was to lead with both our head and our hearts. In other words, to lead with love. In speaking with her for SWE's Diverse podcast, I found Patti to be both an instructional leader and an inspirational person. And I very much look forward to her presentation today, where I imagine you will all feel the same. Let us please give a warm SWE welcome to Patti Poppe.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everybody, and where are my Boilermakers in the house? Woo! Now, I was reminded when I was getting ready to join you all of the last time I spoke at a SWE National Conference. And it was a big deal. I think I had just graduated. I really don't remember why I was asked to speak, but of course I never miss a moment. So I got up at the stage, looking over at my friends, my Purdue Boilermakers, for inspiration and support. And instead, what I found was a table of brilliant women with spoons on their noses. Where are you, ladies? Look to the women with the spoons on their noses. We felt it important to repeat the feat. Bravo, ladies. The video was so cool about Purdue because it was so instrumental in my own journey, but it's not just Purdue. I have to give a couple other shout outs, though of course Purdue is always near and dear to my heart. But anyone from Stanford in the house? Oh, we're gonna have to get them here next year, everybody. Don't worry, I'll get them to Houston. I'm in their neighborhood now. And how about University of Michigan? I was able to participate at University of Michigan when they hosted the regional conference. The last Region H conference was held at University of Michigan. And my daughter Margaret actually went to University of Michigan. Oh, I'm gonna get choked up. Oh, I didn't expect that. She couldn't be here today, but this was her darn idea. So hopefully she'll get to watch the video. And she had another thing she couldn't miss today. So thank you, University of Michigan. You were very good to my girl. And back to Purdue. So is Purdue. I had twin girls. One went to Purdue and one went to Michigan. And so I used to say that those 2 schools made such a huge difference in the world, as you continue to do. So I did not expect to get emotional. So it is without a doubt my experience as an engineer that made it possible for me to have the kind of career success that I've had. I has long been aware that the lessons that I learned, the problem solving, the courage, the confidence that came from an engineering degree was so essential to my professional success. But I get asked a lot, how do you manage work and life? What's the trick to balance? How do you do it? And I actually don't like the question. So I'm going to challenge some notions here today, hopefully not controversial. I have a theory and a principle that I've learned about that says to not try and judge equal, weight. Don't let others assign for you how you should spend your time 50-50. The kind of work-life balance sometimes for me implies like it has to be 50-50. And for me, I think it's more important to imbalance your life to that which you love. Spend more time doing the things that you love to do. And then you will have the richness and the fullness in your life. And it turns out my daughter Elizabeth actually taught me about this. There's a Japanese philosophy some of you may be familiar with called Ikigai. And Ikigai is the theory of joy and purpose, finding joy in your own purpose. And so these components, and I'm going to break them down. We're going to go through them. I'll tell you some stories about how these pieces fit together for me, and hopefully that will inspire you in your own definition of Ikigai, your own personal Ikigai, because each Ikigai is unique. And sometimes I feel like we feel pressured to meet somebody else's expectation of what success looks like, or somebody else's definition for us of how we are best able to spend our time. It's up to us. It's up to you to discover how these pieces of your Ikigai come together. So let's start with the basics. Get paid for what you do. So that's the first. Now, you all have made a very wise career choice in this matter because you're going to do well financially, economically. There's no doubt that an engineering and a STEM degree, math, science, opens doors and creates opportunities for you. That is the basics, but that's not where it stops. Like too many people, I think, sometimes fall into the trap of stopping here. Go for the job with the highest pay. Yeah, I'll take that job because it pays XYZ more. I caution you against that because there's more to it than just the paycheck. The paychecks will come, don't worry. But you have to have the full Ikigai so that those paychecks have meaning. And I'll just tell you a story about this. I was at my niece's college graduation. Any Spartans in the house? Michigan State, are you with me? I love my Spartans. Very good. Yeah, so my niece was graduating, and I was at the keg, maybe not unsurprisingly, and talking to her boyfriend at the time, who had also just graduated from Michigan State in the supply chain program, which is a really great program at Michigan State. He had a good job. And I said to him, "So you excited about your new job?" He said, "No." I said, "What?" He said, "It's just a means to an end, really. I just work to live so that I can have the life that I want. That's the only reason I have a job." And I said, "But what if it could be fun and exciting and you could love it?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't think so." I said, "Caitlin, he is not the one, man. That guy's going to be miserable. He is going to be miserable." Unfortunately, she figured that out. But that is a mistake. You have so much more potential than that. So much more potential. So then you start by leaning in then to what you're good at. Obviously, each of you has a unique set of skills, capabilities. You're smart. You've chosen this technical career path probably because you're good at it and good at parts of it. Maybe better at some parts than other. But I know in my own experiences, I was good at organizing things, planning things, getting people to come together, achieve results they didn't expect. I was good at that. And I had this plant manager, though, who sort of intervened in my career path. I was doing this job, and this is especially for those of you in your early, mid-careers. I was doing a job that I was really good at. I was a plant planner, it was called, in a big automotive assembly plant. And my next role should have been a promotion. And in fact, I had been offered a promotion. There's a funny story that it was actually from Mary Barrow way back when, but I'll save that one for a different day. So I had this offer for a promotion, and my plant manager pulled me aside. He said, now, Patti, I don't think you should take that job. I'm like, oh, but Herb, it was gonna come with a company car. I was gonna get out of the assembly plant, no shift work. I thought this will be really good. He's like, here's the problem, Patti. He said, you're really good at leading people. You're really good at this operations stuff. And if you leave now, you will have missed the opportunity to be a first-line supervisor, which any of you who have been first-line supervisors know it's a very hard job. And it definitely doesn't come with a company car. He knew, he could see in me things I couldn't yet see in myself about my potential, about my skills, what I was good at. And so he interrupted me doing the kind of do what you get paid for mindset. And he asked me, do you want to be a plant manager someday? And I had really admired him and saw what a difference he made to the people he led. And he was the kind of leader that made you feel better at home and at work, because we were winning together because of his leadership. And yeah, I wanted to be that kind of leader who could make a difference for people, who would make their lives better because they were winning at work. Yeah, I wanted to be that. He said, then you got to do operations. And he said, someday, even if you do somehow get to be a plant manager, you won't have done this first-line supervisor thing, and the team will know it. The team that you lead will know it. Do the tough stuff. Take the tough choices. And in this case, he knew what I was good at and really brought that out in me. So those of you who lead others, take a moment and pay attention to what your team is good at, what the people you lead are good at, and make sure that you're helping them identify that. Like, get clear about it. Pay attention yourselves about what are the things that are really easy for you. Chances are, what's really easy for you is not really easy for everybody else. And so you can take advantage of the fact that you're really good at something and do it more often. Very important part to a full purpose-driven life. But I discovered partway down the road that just doing what I was good at wasn't quite enough. And in fact, I remember a time I was working for a guy, and he said to me, you want to go on a rally trip, like a car rally this weekend, and race cars? I was like, no, I do not. That was not interesting to me at all. And he's like, what? And then I slipped up and I said something like, yeah, I can't even drive a stick. No, that's not my thing. He's like, what? You make cars for a living. You have to drive a stick shift. I said, no, man, like really, that's just not my thing. And honest to goodness, this totally happened. He put it on my performance appraisal. Some poor intern had to take me out back and teach me how to drive the stick shift. And then he assigned it to me for my car. Like, that was not nice. But the point of that whole story was I said to him in that moment, I said, I don't make cars for a living. I lead people for a living. Which was sort of a hint about what I really loved, what really motivated me. And in that moment, he actually missed an opportunity. He missed lots of opportunities, but he definitely missed that one. He missed that moment where he could help me tap into the work I was doing and how it tied to what I loved. Sometimes what's confusing about this do what you love idea is that people think that maybe I have to go work for this very altruistic company that only does this thing I really care about to have an impact. Well, I don't think that's often true. There's many ways that you can take the role that you have right now, the job that you're doing or the job you're about to start, and make sure you consciously link it to that you love. And so for me, leading people was always something that I loved to do. But I also had these other interesting things, and this is where I think people also don't necessarily connect the dots for themselves. And so I encourage you to be curious about yourself. And what do you do in your free time? What kind of blogs do you subscribe to? What kind of podcasts are you listening to when it's totally discretionary? How are you spending your discretionary time? There are hints in that for you. Each of us is a snowflake. Each of us has our own interests, and you think everybody does, but not necessarily. You have unique capabilities and interests and things that you love. In fact, I had a sermon one time that was told to me that I really felt was like, there was a big church, like this many people it seemed like were in the church. And the pastor started his sermon, and just a little backstory to this. I always kind of felt bad. And you're going to have to hang with me on this story. Don't give up on me right here at the beginning. I always felt bad that I really wasn't that interested in volunteering at the Special Olympics. I felt bad about that because it's important. I love that they do it, but it never really got me going. And so here I am now, fast forward, I'm sitting at church. Pastor is giving his deal, and he says, you know, we all have our unique paths to joy. And for example, not everyone is for the Special Olympics. I was like, what? Ooh. Like, oh my goodness. He's talking to me. He said, where you are finding your joy, when it's easy, when you do it because nobody asked you to, that's when you've discovered your unique gift, your unique contribution to the world. I found mine in FIRST Robotics. Any FIRST Robotics people in the house? I mean, come on, that is good stuff, holy moly. That was fun. And so I realized that even in our careers, in our professions, we can find the joy, and when it's easy and what we're working on really makes us happy, then chances are you're working on the right stuff. If it's really hard and you haven't found your heart connected to it, you should just ask yourself, could I actually find more purpose, more joy in my life? And go and find it. Pursue it, be it, unapologetically. Do what you love more often. And then that really leads to the whole notion, and this is the full circle, and this is what really was an important transition in my own career, was to know what I loved and then parlay that into doing something that the world needed. And I can assure you, working for an energy company, when I switched from automotive to energy, it was a big decision. And that decision at the time was made, I think, for very family-oriented, personal reasons. But ultimately, what I realized is in transitioning to energy at this time, energy is being reimagined and reinvented. I'm going to tell you a few things about that and why I'm so convinced that I have a perfect opportunity for myself to live my full ikigai. Working for PG&E and Consumers Energy before that were really important contributions to this war on climate change and what must be done. And I can tell you, I think of California as ground zero for the effects of climate change. I know there's obviously other places around the world that are experiencing the extreme effects of climate change, but I live in one. And living in California with the drought and the wildfires became a very important part of my decision to leave a job I loved. I loved my job as CEO of CMS Energy. I was in my hometown. I lived next door to my sisters and my dad, and our whole family was together. Here I was in my hometown as the CEO of the biggest employer. I thought at that point I was done, like I had achieved my professional accomplishments. This is my legacy here in my hometown. And then I got the call for PG&E. And I have to tell you, at first I was like, oh, no, that's too hard. Like, that's a tough job. That's a tough job. In fact, this is funny. When I did say yes, the day after I took it and it was announced, Larry Culp. Any GE people in the house? Larry called me and he said, Patti, you're the only one with the harder job than me in America now. But you know, this role was definitely a challenge that somebody needed to do. The opportunity for PG&E to reimagine the electric grid faster than anybody else because the climate impacts are so extreme right now is the opportunity of a generation, and we know that. I was driving through an area in Northern California, Northern California. I think a lot of people think Northern California ends at San Francisco, but trust me, it goes a lot further. And we serve that whole area all the way to Oregon. And I was driving up there one day, and I was looking at the power lines running through the national forest after having observed the terrible effects of wildfire on communities. I had been in a town that day that had burned to the ground. Every house, every building. And I was looking at those power lines, knowing that a tree coming in contact with a power line can cause a fire like that. And I imagined that Thomas Edison today could walk into a substation and recognize most of the equipment. It looked pretty familiar to him. Generators generate, conductor conducts. It's pretty much the same stuff, but not for long. And I realized that when originally those lines were run through that forest, it was because it was the pathway to prosperity. When we built the electric grid in the beginning, it was the opportunity for the world to mechanize, to electrify, to power the economy. And that has worked for 80 years, just like it is. But today, it needs reimagining. Today, those lines, you know, when they were run originally, it was shortest distance between 2 points. It made perfect sense. It was economic. Not today. It's not economic. There's a social cost to shortest distance between 2 points. So what does that mean? That means we need not just to relocate those wires, we need less of them. I say it like this, is maybe not wireless electricity, but a whole lot less wires. And many of you are working on this sort of topics and have the potential to work on distributed energy resources, solar panel, and batteries that can power communities. We're installing them right now in California as we speak. We're taking the wires out of neighborhoods and putting in a microgrid. I have a picture I keep on my phone that's this long dirt road, these enormous trees, and a little power line. Like you can see, it's just down the road. And all of those trees, I took that picture, all of those trees were marked for removal because they might hit that power line. I thought, team, that won't do. But guess what? We don't have at scale the solutions, which is why we need all of you to help reimagine how to deliver electricity. Whether it's underground, we announced a major undergrounding program, the largest of its kind ever in history. I think of it as one of the largest infrastructure projects in the history of our nation. And we're making progress. And we're figuring out how to do it in an affordable way. It's a sucker's choice to say the wires, if they're buried, sure, they're better, but they're too expensive. We can have both economic and environmentally friendly power distribution systems, but we have to invent it, and we get to do that. And at the root of the adaptation that's happening in California and with our grid is the root of the challenge, which is climate change. And we have the opportunity of a generation, all of us, this is for our collective we, to reimagine our world, decarbonized, electrifying vehicles, eliminating the methane emissions, carbon emissions, and having a prosperous future. I'm not satisfied with we're going to decarbonize and everybody's just going to be broke or without energy. None of that's true. We're going to have abundant energy that is both clean, affordable, safe, reliable. All those things can be true. But I have to tell you, team, this is a new dawn, and we're psyched about it. So when I thought about my ikigai and what was possible and what was necessary, starting with the people of California, my coworkers, but then more broadly for the people of the world, a move to PG&E as the CEO was the opportunity of a lifetime I couldn't turn down. My chairman of the board, when he was interviewing me for this role, I've been there since January. It feels like I've been there for 5 minutes, but been on the ground since January. And I remember when he was interviewing me, what he really said that got me. He said, Patti, I want you to think about this job as your professional final exam. You've prepared for this. And I don't know, maybe we're all eternal students, but that got me. I was like, oh gosh, okay, that sounds good. But what he really knew is that my ikigai could be fulfilled by doing what I'm good at leading people, good at getting results that nobody ever imagined before, good at getting organizations to move together as one. I love leading people to win. I love making a difference in the lives of the people that I work with and that we serve. And the world definitely needs what we're working on at PG&E. But that's my ikigai. I challenge you to discover yours. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive and are doing what they are uniquely gifted, skilled, prepared for. What's going to be your professional legacy? What is the contribution that you're going to make to the world? It might be through your own individual contributions. It might be through leading others and helping them discover what makes them come alive. It might be working on a team that discovers the unimaginable, that comes up with the next breakthrough in whatever industry, sector, work environment you find yourself. Discover your ikigai and help others find theirs. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you. So, Rachel, before we sit, I do have 3 minutes left, so I've got one last thing. I need my Boilermakers to stand up, and we're going to teach everybody. The MIT people might know this cheer, but the Purdue people, stand up. We're going to sing the engineering fight song. Does everybody know it? If you know it, please stand and join us. Here we go. I should put it on the screen, but we're going to do it. Rachel, maybe you don't know it.
I don't know it.
Okay, here we go. We're going to teach it. E to the x, dy dx, e to the x dx. Cosine, secant, tangent, sine, 3.14159, square root, cube root, BTU, slipstick, HP, yay, Purdue! We'll get that out there to everybody. All right, Rachel, let's sit down and talk. We'll get the words out to everyone. I think they've revised them. They might not be a slipstick anymore. That's kind of old school.
I just realized I don't actually have the iPad to get questions.
Oh,
so
yes. Okay, Rachel will be right back.
I'll be right back.
We can keep chatting. We'll talk about more engineering cheers. My friends with the spoons. What's my favorite food? Well, those pretzels. Oh.
Sorry about that.
No worry. I should have taken a selfie with the crowd.
This is part of the adaptability and flexibility
That's
of
right.
this year, and thank you so much for your inspirational words. I think that was a really fantastic model for everyone to live their lives. So
Thank you, Rachel.
we have some questions from the audience, starting with, what is one skill that has unexpectedly helped you excel in your career?
Well, two come to mind, but one, cheerleading. I don't think my parents ever thought that was a good use of my time, but you know, as a leader, we often have to be the cheerleader, and we have to keep our teams excited and motivated and believing in themselves and shaking off that last loss and moving on and you know, really doing what we do best. And so I do think that's been a useful skill.
That's a very unique answer.
I'm sure.
So what is, so speaking of Ikigai, what is something, like, can you tell us where you learned that?
Well, yeah, my daughter had heard me talk about this kind of challenging work-life balance notion. And I didn't have good words to put to it. In fact, sometimes it made people mad because they felt like I was advocating for working too much. And so how I was saying it wasn't what I really meant. And when she found that model, she was actually studying in Stockholm, and she saw the model and she texted me one day, and sure enough, it completed my thoughts about it. I learned a lot about it and really see it as a pathway. You know, Japanese people have more centurions per capita than any other nation. Now, it could be the fish and the good vegetables, but I also think this purpose-driven life is an important part of finding joy and longevity.
Absolutely. Chris, I hate calling for tech support being an engineer, and my husband who's in the audience will know this, but Chris, we do not seem to be getting an update on any of the questions right now, so.
Let's see.
Maybe we can pivot to audience questions live. I don't know if we have microphones out there.
Maybe.
We could take that selfie right now.
Yeah,
if
let's
you
do
wanted to
that while we're
that.
figuring out. I definitely want to take that selfie. There we go. And there, here, I'll take a picture of Chris, saving the day.
Can we get the house lights
yeah,
up
house
so we can
lights?
get the audience in the picture maybe while we're doing this?
Maybe the tech support is tied up on the questions. Oh, look at this, Rachel.
Great view. Look at that. Yeah.
He got in the shot. He photobombed us. Okay, you don't seem that excited. Let's give it a stand up, cheer. You're getting a selfie here. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
I think that we really just wanted to challenge ourselves for how flexible can we be at the last part of the SWE conference.
Yeah.
We're engineers. We're
done.
very flexible. Thank
You're
you, Chris.
almost done.
So, next question from the audience. What can you ask for from men for an environment to, wow, the question just disappeared. What can you ask for from men to make an environment feel less masculine?
There have been many times when I was the only woman. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that having more than one of us does make it better, and it makes it seem less masculine. But I also think, as women and as leaders, we have the opportunity to share our full range of emotions and not apologize for it. Though I did apologize for crying up here. I just caught myself off guard. But, you know, there was a time in my career, probably the first 15 years really, where I quite distinctly separated work from life. Like there was a whole era where I didn't put pictures of my kids in the office. I thought I would look weak. I was in mostly men environments, you know, thinking that that's what I had to do to survive or succeed. And I realized, in fact, I took a really cool training course that really challenged my notions about that I could be my whole self. And I know we talk about that. It's up to you. You have to decide to be you and realize that they need you. And they're going to be really, people love someone who is self-confident enough to be themselves. And when you're self-confident to be yourself, to laugh at what makes you laugh, to cry at what makes you cry, to get frustrated, to be happy, the whole range of you, the environment will adapt and change for men too, because maybe they've been telling themselves the same thing, that they couldn't express their full range. And I'll tell you, my team, you mentioned it in the intro that we're leading with love at PG&E. And we are taking a tough hill. I mean, it's a tough time and a big challenge. But what gets us through is each other and knowing each other fully and completely. And we have a whole new leadership team. And we took the time to really get to know each other. And when you do those kind of get to know you things, you can stick to the surface, or you can really be vulnerable and let people see you. And that's contagious. And the affinity that is developed between a team of people who really get to know each other is very powerful, and is statistically and lots of research validates it's those kinds of teams that deliver breakthrough outcomes.
I think that's been a key theme of a lot of my SWE experiences, being true to your authentic self and being your whole self at work. So thank you
Really
for sharing
important.
that. Did you feel scared in changing your sector? So you went from automotive to energy. Maybe your opinions not being valued enough due to lack of experience.
Wow, somebody was with me who's in the audience. Yes, that definitely, it was scary. And I remember in my early years in the energy space having to reprove myself, which was a surprise. I didn't contemplate that when I left automotive and went to a utility. I didn't realize that my experience would be questioned. And then I realized that you do have to earn the trust of others, and you shouldn't expect it to just be granted by title or what have you. And so I've since then long learned that when you're in a new role, to be very curious is very important, to ask a lot of questions and to be willing to learn. And I have a little story about this. I had been at my new utility for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months. And I was doing what I had hoped was a pathway to kind of general management. I didn't want to do operations anymore. I had done operations for 15 years. I was ready for general management. I wanted to learn about financials and other things. And then I heard through the rumor mill that I was going to be offered this power plant director role to run 5 power plants. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And so I had myself all prepared for my president to come to me and say, Patti, we've got a big job for you. And I was going to say, thanks, but no thanks. I've done that, been there, done that. But truly a miracle. A friend of mine, some people in the audience maybe know, Zara Rolfus Larson, a Purdue alum, called me out of the blue. We hadn't talked to each other maybe in 6 months. Out of the blue, that night, on my way home, she called me. And I said, Zara, they're going to offer me this awful job. I don't want to take it. And she said, whoa, Patti, wait up. She said, do you think they've ever had an outsider run their power plants? I was like, no. Do you think they've ever had a woman run their power plants? That's an energy company, Patti. It's the golden, whatever you call that, I don't think I'm allowed to say that. So whatever it is, that's it's their prized possession, and they're entrusting it to you. You're new. They're giving you this huge opportunity. Maybe it's a big deal for them. And I was like, oh no. So, of course, the next day I said yes, oh, that'll be great. And it turns out, and this is a true, 100% true, I did that job for 5 years. I learned about our sector, boots on the ground, and it is exactly because of that that I became the CEO of the utility, because they knew I had the real experience. I was equipped to compete for the top jobs because I had that operational, fundamental, foundational experience that I still rely on every day. It's the most important thing is producing and delivering electricity, and I get it at the boots on the ground level. And so I just think that sometimes you take these bold moves and it works out.
It reminds me of your story of being a first-line supervisor in your initial jobs.
Yeah, you know, sometimes these operating jobs are not for the faint of heart.
So speaking of being authentic to yourself and bringing your whole self to work, so your story about driving a stick shift, do you drive a stick shift now?
No. Hello, I have choices. I do drive an electric car though, and so no more gear shifting required, so that's kind of cool. And I do surprise myself sometimes. One day I was on the Bay Bridge, which is notorious for traffic, and I wanted to just pass someone. And and you know, there's auto torque, which I had forgotten, and I hit the accelerator in that electric car and surprised myself. Let's just say, no one was injured. I did not hit another moving vehicle, but I got in my lane change very fast. I was like, whoa, I got to dial that down.
They accelerate very quickly.
Very fun to drive.
What can male CEOs learn from female CEOs?
Well, I think we can learn from each other for sure. I do find that it is, once I allowed myself to be my authentic self, I think it can be a really good role model. I mean, our leadership team at my company truly leads with head and heart, intentionally, on purpose. Our purpose is to lead with love, and I think that's an important thing for men and women to learn, that there's sort of this industrial complex about work and this kind of contract that was born back in the Industrial Revolution, that it's a work-pay arrangement. You work, you get paid. It's the lower circle of the ikigai. And that's as much as there is to it. And I think when you lead with that full spectrum, that it is, we spend so much time on our careers. Why wouldn't they be fulfilling? Why wouldn't you spend more time making sure that the link between the challenge that you and your team are facing is linked to what makes the world a better place, what your team loves to do, what they're good at? I think that's a really important way of leading that is multidimensional, and I think women are sometimes really good at the multidimensional thinking that causes us to be able to lead with that full spectrum. And I think if more companies led with love, I think the world would be a much better place.
So speaking of ikigai, one of the categories is sacrifice. Do you believe sacrifice is necessary to find a job that is almost just perfect? Or the person who asked this question felt like the perfect job doesn't exist without that sacrifice. Interested in your perspective.
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think sometimes it's framing how you're thinking about it, that it isn't necessarily a sacrifice, that you think that what defines what I love to do is one thing, but like, for example, when I went to run those power plants and I was not excited about it, I was like, I realized that I could grow my own leadership. I could learn more about the business. How I did that job was up to me. How I defined what success in that role was up to me. And we had this whole commitment to creating ownership from our frontline teams, and we experimented with decision-making authorities close to the point of activity. We built these cross-functional teams that ran the units. They had best ever performance. Had I just let that job be what it was defined on paper, it would have been a sacrifice. But because I took it to a higher order of what the world needed, what those people needed, and what I loved, and combined those and designed it in such a way, there was no more sacrifice anymore. And I ended up being very sad when I left that job. It was, a great experience, and it definitely led to my career success following it. But I think what we tell ourselves can really unlock what the full benefits of a job can be.
Yeah, shifting our mindsets.
Yeah.
Critical. What is one thing, if you could go back in time to when you were in college, that you would do the same or that you would do differently?
Back in college?
That's what the question asks, yeah.
Did you
we
guys
know it's
ask
not
this?
the fight song.
You guys asked this, didn't you? Nothing? Nothing went wrong at college. I do have one thing. I have one thing I can say at least. I was in a hurry. And this was true probably, again, my first half of my career. I was in a hurry to do big things. And so I was in a hurry to graduate from college because it was just the next step in getting to doing the big things. And so I finished in 3.5 years and really worked hard. And that extra semester would have been really fun that I should have stuck around for. And I think I could have let myself find a little more joy in that journey instead of hurry up and get to the next thing and then get to the next thing. And I think that happens in our career. Sometimes I just have to get this job done so I can get to the next job. And if you can find joy in that journey, pace yourself. It can be a rich and rewarding career, life, ikigai, a life on purpose.
Great. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right.
Absolutely. I think this is our last question. To reimagine the electric grid, what key technologies and training should the educational system be investing in to drive innovation?
Well, data science, number one. There's so much information that we are not tapping into that would allow us to control and optimize then the flow of electrons. It's a very, the grid of today, I'll just say it like this, and I know we're at time, but let me just say this. The grid of today reminds me a lot of like I-80 in Iowa. Any Hawkeyes in the house? Okay, and the Cyclones. So the I-80 through Iowa is, long, straight, a couple on-ramps, couple off-ramps. The grid is like that today. Big bulk power flows pretty much one direction and then gets distributed out on, think of it like the city streets, if you will, off the big highway. The big bulk grid of the future is going to look a lot more like downtown San Francisco, where you've got trains, cars, pedestrians, bikes, scooters, the whole thing going on. The cable cars. We won't have cable cars on the grid, but you never know. The reality is just much more dynamic, two-way flows. I want to just give a teaser to everyone out there. I imagine a day in the not distant future where we have vehicles powering our homes. Now, I heard about this a decade ago, and everybody laughed it off. But I can tell you today, we are doing it. We are doing it. And so for us, let me just give you a specific example. We have these high fire threat areas in California where we proactively shut off the power because we have to keep people safe. And people hate that, and I don't blame them. We're going to plug cars into their houses so they never even know that it's happening. They're going to be able to power their home with their car for days. A vehicle today in California, in my service area of California, which is about 2/3 of the state, we have 1 in 5 of the electric vehicles sold in America are in my service area, and that's 6,700 megawatts of capacity, which is like 5 power plants, 5 huge bulk power plants, driving around on the road today, doing nothing but pulling from the grid. Those cars are going to now power the grid and use renewable energy, which is abundant midday, to power houses once the lights go down. The game is about to change, and it's going to be mobile, distributed energy that is truly going to change the world. That's happening right now.
That sounds amazing. So it does look like we are almost we are out of time for today's session. Patti, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I would encourage everyone to listen to our podcast episode where you talked so much more about leading with love and how you implemented that at PG&E. I hope we will see you again at future conferences.
Of course you will. I'm a lifer, a sweet lifer.
And I want to yes.
Well, I'm with all of you. Who would want to miss this?
You certainly have been someone who I aspire to be like, and I think for everyone in this audience, you really embody that aspire to inspire theme. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Oh, hold on. Patti, I think that she wants to. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you, Patti, so much. So thank you all for coming. And while Patti was giving her keynote, I did learn that our coat check and luggage check have been moved. So we promise all of your luggage is still in the building. It's just not in the room where you left it. For all of you who are looking for that, please go to the ESG security office in the middle hallway of the convention center. The location should be flashing up here on the screens. This does conclude our closing keynote for WE21. This is always a little bittersweet for all of us, I know, and especially for me this year as your president. The conference certainly isn't ended, though. With your registration, you do have continued access to recorded sessions until January 23rd, 2022. And for all of our virtual attendees interested in career moves, our virtual career fair is scheduled for next Tuesday, October 22nd. Please remember to upload your resumes and to book appointments with our over 200 companies that are participating in that virtual career fair. It has been my honor and my pleasure as your FY22 president to host these keynote sessions and to meet with all of you. We are always working to make SWE and these conferences the best they can be for each one of you, our members. Please complete the survey form that will be emailed back to you next week. That's how we get feedback, and that's how we continue to improve constantly. Thank you for attending WE21, and I hope to see all of you next year in Houston at WE22. And one final reminder as you head home, please stay safe, stay healthy, and remember to always aspire to inspire. Thank you.